50 years later, what have we really learned? I'm not talking about racism. I think and hope we've made some progress there. But on government spending under the guise of helping people, I think we've made very little progress there. Because this war on poverty, I hate to break it to you, we are losing it, my friends. Began a little more than a year after Martin Luther King spoke on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Waste upon waste that I think warrants its own memorial. A memorial that I think should read, in memory of taxpayers of all races and creeds, good money gone after bad for good goals never realized. I don't think that's bad. I could see that etched in stone. Anyway, this is despite spending more than $16 trillion since Lyndon Johnson's famous war on poverty. Yet we have a higher percentage of Americans today in poverty. More Americans than ever going hungry, despite 1 in 3 Americans supposedly on some form of food assistance. How is that? Why is that? And then there's Medicare, a very ambitious program started in 1965 to help the elderly with their medical needs at a cost of $66 million. Today, a budget behemoth to the tune of $500 billion, with total obligations north now of $1 trillion. Yet for all those trillions still spent. So what happened? And why do those big government pushes crawling out of the woodwork today and using Martin Luther King's name push for still more? To Richard Benjamin, who says, because they should, and we should, especially on this day. To Ron Meyer, who says, well, we should stop and reassess, especially on this day. Okay, so Richard, your argument is all these programs, all these trillions spent, all supposedly today espoused under the name of Martin Luther King, money well spent.
Yes, but you're pointing out what government is doing, but we also have us people, we also have the private business sector.
No, that I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about here is the money the government has poured in, we have poured as taxpayers, all races, yielding very little results.
All that government money in the world cannot account for the business changes we've seen in the 40 last years, hollowing out the middle class, workers' wages plummeting down, Wall Street executive wages going up, CEO wages going up. So this wealth inequality explains the poverty we've seen.
Wait a minute.
And it almost
you would think that
16
trillion, you would think that 16 trillion would at least stop that, slow that, change that.
But what about the figure of money, trillions that have gone wasted?
I guess let me ask you, and I will get to my other guests, but I want to be clear.
Yeah.
You don't think that 16 trillion was wasted?
It hasn't been wasted. Okay. Not only has it not been wasted, but we have to look at the wasted money we've spent giving unfair subsidies to already profitable businesses in the society when worker productivity has gone up.
All right, I would think, venturing a guess, it pales in comparison to that 16 trillion, but I could be wrong. Ron, what say you?
Well, I think Rich has a good point that we've wasted money on Wall Street before, but I don't think that justifies that we've made zero progress on what we've been trying to solve, and that's the, we've tried this war on poverty. It's failed. When I talk to folks, I'm running for Congress in Northern Virginia. When I talk to folks in Woodbridge, which is a predominantly African American
By the way, as you said,
community,
Ron, we do reach out to your opponents, a little avail, but continue.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in there,
No,
but I'm
okay,
saying I talk to people on a daily basis about these problems, and what they're worried about is that the government programs haven't been working for them. They haven't seen any progress, and what they would like to see is school choice. The biggest thing on their mind is, can they give their kids a better opportunity down the road? And in areas like Woodbridge, in areas like Herndon and Annandale, you can't find better.
You are saying that whatever the government has done, Ron, has failed, and so less money going out
we have
from
to
the
try
government.
something new.
Okay, what do you think of that?
Yeah. Less money going out for the government is doing better, is he saying?
Yeah, stop the government madness. Stop the multi-trillion-dollar wars on poverty that still leave us poor, or the 1 in 3 on some sort of food help and support that still leaves the same percentage of Americans going hungry. Stop it.
You couldn't begin to do that unless you agreed to raise the minimum wage, unless you agreed to protect workers and giving them the right to protect themselves against corporations in terms of organizing. So if he did that, I asked him whether he'd be willing to increase the minimum wage alongside
Would you swap that? That's a good question.
So,
it's a little crazy, but Richard is a crazy guy, but a lovable guy. But what do you think of that? All right, we'll swap out all the trillions that we have spent that's apparently gone nowhere, and if you give us some of this other stuff.
Yeah, well, I think what we have to look at is what the policies have actually worked for the African-American community. When it comes to minimum wage, I don't think it's done an incredible amount of good. But if we look at policies that have worked, when Reagan actually did tax reform in the 80s, we saw a 30% drop in black youth unemployment. If we look at black youth unemployment now, it's at 42%. 42%.
Well,
and we've had a president that's tried to
stop
focus
right there.
on
Right.
it,
Do
and
you
it's still
think if
awful.
Martin Luther King were alive today and he knew what would happen with all the federal money that would be committed to helping minorities to get back on their feet, to helping the starving, stop starving, what do you think he'd say?
I think he'd be really disappointed. I think he'd be trying to call for new policies. Instead of retrying things that have failed and haven't worked, we're at the same place we were 50 years ago. He'd say, let's look at something new. Let's look at a different way of empowering people who are low income so they can have new opportunities and fresh chances. That's why, and I'll come back to it, school choice is an important issue that we have to be looking at, because
Richard,
that's
what do you think
about
of that?
empowerment.
What do you think of that? That if he were to come back, and this is rampant today, everyone's saying this is what Martin Luther King would have done. There's no way of knowing, because like I said, he's dead, and how can we know? But if you were to come back and look at what's happened, all the money and what it's yielded, would he say more of this empowering stuff? Would he talk about what you say about businesses doing more? What?
I would. I do want to go on this empowering note, this optimistic note. So that means we allowed ourselves to get caught flat-footed with these changes, with globalization and technology. We didn't have a policy, and so all these minorities in cities particularly are left without jobs. So he died, by the way. He was striking with garbage workers when he died.
That's right.
So he does care for these average workers who, in this new economy, we're caught flat-footed. And so on an optimistic note, we do believe in empowerment. It's not just a question of government spending, but how
So
can
you
we
support school choice then?
how can we go to a new economy that's not simply low wage with these jobs that don't pay?
All right. Well, I think
how are
what we
we gonna
both,
get
guys, I wish we were able to drive. I think we both conclude here, at least given our track record, the government's record on trying to solve a lot of social ills, it has failed. So maybe it's time to at least reprioritize. And you both offer some good ideas in that regard. Gentlemen, thank you.